Shitty and reductive jokes are kind of my brand. My God, what a cruise line buffet of the gradients in American gender expression. Turns out there's a lot of non-binary shit happening between the binaries.
Hi, Kara. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you, Birdie?
I'm good, thank you. I'm sweating a little bit because I had to look for things up here. Everything was supposed to be in its place and it wasn't. And I was like, no, but I've got a cup of tea, so it's all good.
That's how it goes, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. When you think you've got everything sorted and there's just one thing out of place. So,
yeah.
We were going to talk about the Jon Stewart video. Should we start with that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So as people know, Jon Stewart came out with a video on Friday, October 7th. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, it is a complete, in my view, it is a completely disingenuous, full-throated endorsement of the sterilization and mutilation of children.
Okay, I'm going to say I only saw the clip that's on Twitter. I didn't see the whole thing, but I am tempted to reactivate my Apple TV thing so that I can watch it all. Because from what you're saying, there's a lot more to it than what I saw. And when I saw it, I'll just put this out there, I didn't get it because I used to like Jon Stewart maybe about 12 or 15 years ago. I used to think he was cool. And when I watched him today, it didn't seem genuine. It didn't seem sincere. It felt like I used to think, and maybe this is just because I was younger, but I used to think Jon Stewart was pretty cool and he was pretty clued up and he had a lot to say for himself and about what's going on. And it was all a bit tongue in cheek. But this felt a bit more sort of like drama school stuff. You know, when you get told what to say by the teacher and then you have to present it to your mum and dad and all of that. It felt a little bit like that. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah. So a couple things on that. Jon Stewart was for years an absolute staple for me when it came to political comedy. I watched him, I don't want to say religiously because that's a silly word, but I watched him regularly when he was hosting The Daily Show. And that was absolutely a staple for not where I got news, obviously, but where I got what I thought was insightful commentary. And I thought that he was very intelligent, and I still do. And I'll get into why that's important in a second. I do think that he's very intelligent, and I think he thinks through things thoroughly. And that's part of why this recent video is so devastating to American TERFs, I will just say. So just getting into that a little bit more. So a guy named Dan Rather, big staple in American media for the past several decades, retweeted Jon Stewart's video favorably, or one of the clips favorably, and said that it was good journalism. And I will just say, I think that it is possible that Dan Rather is utterly misguided and uninformed and doesn't know what he's talking about on the topic of sex and gender. I do not think the same can possibly be true about Jon Stewart. I think Jon Stewart knows exactly what he's doing, exactly what he's saying. And for anyone who thinks that he might just be misinformed, maybe that's true, but I really don't think so. And here's why. Jon Stewart and Dave Chappelle have been friends for decades, or many years at least. I don't know. I don't know them. But 1 year ago, almost to the day that Jon Stewart released this, Dave Chappelle, American comedian, put out his stand-up comedy show, The Closer, on Netflix. That was on October 5th, 2021. And in that, he talked about J.K. Rowling. He talked about this whole controversy, and he declared that he is, quote, Team TERF. There is no way that Jon Stewart doesn't know that. There's just no way. And Jon Stewart would have spent the past year doing his research. He would have found out what the term TERF refers to. He would know that there is a leftist feminist critique of gender identity. And he would know exactly what he's doing. And most of the 45 minutes of his recent episode are about him criticizing conservatives in a way that I think is completely disingenuous. He does not even bother to mention J.K. Rowling. He does not bother to mention Maya Forstater or Helen Joyce or any of the detransitioners. He doesn't even mention the issue of the skyrocketing number of mostly women, but some men who are detransitioning. He doesn't bother to touch on any of that. He just engages in what I view as a completely disingenuous depiction of anti-trans, and he repeatedly uses that phrase, anti-trans, and he just mocks conservatives who, to be clear, ought to be mocked. You know, like I have made a career out of making fun of conservatives. I'm not friends with conservatives, but he's just lying. He's lying when he says that all of the opposition to gender identity is coming from the political right. And I don't think there's a sliver's worth of a chance that he doesn't know what he's doing.
It's interesting to me because I always thought of him as the guy that takes the piss out of both sides. Like, I didn't think that he had a side necessarily. Does that make sense? It seems like he's chosen a side politically. And
Yeah.
as to what you said about him definitely knowing what's going on, I would argue everybody knows what's going on at this point. And there are some people that don't understand the extent to which the roots of this gender identity has embedded in itself in our society, especially in the West, or I'd say explicitly in the West. But I cannot, with my hand on my heart, say that people do not know that there are people pretending that men are women.
I think that is, from my assessment over here, I think that you're probably right with respect to the UK.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think
we're a tiny island. We're like this big, and you guys are like 50 times as big.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of people in the States who have no idea what's happening still. I don't think that there are that many people in positions of power, whether that means in law, you know, in state legislative bodies or in Congress.
Or in entertainment. People in entertainment like Jon Stewart, there's no way he doesn't know.
There's no way he doesn't know. The only reason I'm maybe willing to give a pass to Dan Rather is because he's up in years. He may legitimately not know, but everyone in entertainment, everyone in media, I'm with you. I don't believe that they don't know. I believe that ordinary average Americans don't know.
Yeah, I'd give a lot more of a pass to even ordinary people in the UK. There might be like somebody's nan might not know about it or something, but yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think that there's any way he doesn't know. He absolutely knows what. Now, it may be a complete coincidence that Jon Stewart's piece came out 1 year, almost to the day of Dave Chappelle's piece declaring himself Team TERF. That might be a coincidence, but the other interesting thing is I was looking into their relationship, and Jon Stewart was awarded the Mark Twain Award for comedy this year, 2022. That's an award that I don't know the association that grants it, but it's called the Mark Twain Award, and it goes to a comedian. And Dave Chappelle has won it, and this year Jon Stewart won it. And it's always announced at the Kennedy Center, which is an art center in Washington, D.C., which I've been to several times. And Dave Chappelle did the introduction to Jon Stewart receiving that award in June of this year. So I guess I'm just sharing that because part of me wonders, what is their relationship like at this point?
Yeah, maybe there's beef now.
I mean, I can't help but wonder.
I mean, I don't think there's anyone left in my life that would openly sort of like be the way Jon Stewart's been. Like Jon Stewart sort of like mocking the idea that there's anything, any sort of credibility to biology, basically, is what he's mocked in the segment that I've seen. And he did it incoherently, in my opinion. I think a man that's as experienced as he is in speaking to an audience and as intelligent as he is would be able to put together a coherent argument. But you can't when your argument is nonsense from the beginning. Does that make sense? Like this idea that people can change their sex and be whatever they want to be, and that there's like a spectrum of continuum of sort of like fluidity between your sexes, that's incoherent. And even if you call it gender and you say it's an expression, that's still incoherent, because at the end of the day, we're talking about personality types, and that's very individual, that's very personal.
So here's what he does. And it's on exactly what you just said. Every single thing he says in favor of gender identity actually relates to one of two things. It either relates to what we know to be intersex or differences of sexual development, or it relates to nonconformity with sex stereotypes. He says quite accurately several times that there are people who don't have the typical XX or XY chromosomal makeup. We know that. We all know that that's true.
Of course he said that.
Said that, right? And he also refers to people who refuse to conform to sex stereotypes. But he conflates all of that with transgender.
Everyone does this, and it's really, it's really disingenuous. It's like when people pull up PCOS, which is what I've got, and they're like, hey, that's trans too. Or they'll say that it's trans by default because it's intersex, which is neither of those things. So it really annoys me when people make these stupid arguments, especially if they're intelligent and they seem to know what they're doing. And here's another thing I was going to say. I looked it up on YouTube. I just watched it again before we started talking, just a clip. And I was reading through the comments, and there were so many people congratulating him, telling him he's done a good job, sticking up for trans people and all of this. And I wondered if he doesn't know, he does know what's going on, but I wonder if he doesn't know exactly how many people disagree with him.
It's a good question. I have no way of knowing if I or my book, The Abolition of Sex, has ever crossed his radar. I have no way of knowing that. I know that I've been tweeting at him since Friday. It's so hard, Bertie, because the American media will not talk about TERFs. The American media will not talk about feminists, gay rights activists, biologists, all on the political left, who criticize gender identity. They just won't talk about it. So does he know how many? I don't know. I mean, I know that I have countless people day in and day out. It's just like what I see on Twitter with labor losing women. I have people day in and day out, mostly women, but plenty of men, who say, I am a lifelong Democrat and I will never vote for the Democrats again because of this. Most of them have not become Republicans because they support abortion rights, which, as you know, is much more controversial and difficult in my country than it is in yours. So they won't become Republicans or vote Republican, but they're just fleeing the Democratic Party left and right, so to speak. But but you know that, I don't know. To address a topic you raised earlier, that he doesn't have a side. I mean, Jon Stewart has always
been. He never used to.
He's solidly on the political left. I mean, to the extent that we have a left in America. I know there's
I'm just going with my perception of him from years ago. I saw him laughing at both sides. So if he had a side, he didn't necessarily overly express a bias, in my opinion. Maybe he did. I mean, if I could look back at what he did back then, I might have a different opinion now. But back then, that's how I saw it. But then again, the left and right seems a little bit slightly different in America to it is here as well. I think we're a lot more how do I choose my words carefully? Crazy on the left. But then you guys have got your crazies as well. So everybody's got their crazies on all the sides.
Well, yeah. And you guys like to criticize us for being rugged individuals and having no class analysis. And that's all completely legitimate. It's true. And you guys like to criticize our Democrat Party for being insufficiently left, which is also true. That's all very true. I get all of that. But it's what we've got. And so those of us who think of ourselves as being politically left, which I do, I have always been a Democrat, except when I was a Green. You know, the only time I've not been a Democrat was when I was a member of the Green Party. And then I changed back to Democrat in order to vote in the 2008 presidential primary. I consider myself ideologically very far left of the Democrat Party, but here we are. It's just what we have. Anyway, yes, we've got our crazies for sure.
I think that's just standard. I think it's going to happen. And I was thinking as well about him not necessarily knowing how many people disagree with him, but I might take that back a little bit, because it's not a matter of disagreeing with him. It's a matter of how many people are not pledging their allegiance to this ideology and pretending and going along. I don't think he realizes. I think he thinks everybody's signing up.
He might. I don't know. It's so hard to know. But part of what makes me so angry about what he's done is that he's perpetuating it. I don't know if you saw the clip of his interview with the Attorney General of Arkansas.
No, I haven't. You can tell me about it.
Yeah, there's another clip that he posts about the Attorney General of Arkansas, who's a very conservative woman. And I will just say, I think she did a horrible job in the interview. And I also think that he reveals his bias, and he does a great job of painting all critique of gender as being conservative. And he totally used her. And I just think that I think she did a horrible job in the interview. And I think that there's a very good reason why he didn't platform someone like you or me. And the reason is he doesn't want his audience to know that we exist. I've got a tweet that I sometimes retweet where I had the thought, and I put it on Twitter in April of last year. The media blackout is calculated. It isn't just that they want to silence us, although they do. It's because they know that if ordinary people across the political spectrum could hear from feminists and gay rights activists and biologists on this issue, we would win. And the media is completely complicit in covering it all up.
Yeah, it's an unfair fight. And I was going to say as well about the media not even mentioning TERFs. I might be wrong in this, but I'm pretty sure that happened here for the longest time, or it felt like a long time. And then the word TERF started creeping in to the media, but it was definitely weaponized. It was definitely used as these are the bad guys, if that makes sense. So I wonder if that's what's going to happen. I'm surprised he didn't mention TERFs, even in a derogatory way. But then that might go against him because people will look up TERFs, right? So then maybe he's made a calculated decision to not mention any of it so that people don't even know where to begin to look for the opposition in this argument.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. There was a piece in the New York Times, maybe about a month ago or a month and a half ago, written by a woman named Pamela Paul. And it talked about the issue of gender and gender identity. And toward the end, it mentioned TERFs, not in a critical way. It just mentioned TERFs as a relevant group in this societal conversation, but it only mentioned you guys. It mentioned J.K. Rowling, not you personally, but it mentioned J.K. Rowling, it mentioned Maya Forstater, and it mentioned a whole bunch of Brits, which is great. It's great. It's great.
Turf Island.
But it didn't mention any American TERFs, so I was a little annoyed. But that's okay. It's still a positive development. I want us to be going further.
The thing is, I don't think there's anybody on TV in the UK that says the word TERF. I'm not sure if there is. I could be wrong on that as well because I don't have a TV.
So I was very resistant to using it for the longest time. Excuse me, for the longest time.
We just did that at the same time, but I didn't go like that. I just went.
I was resistant to using the word for a very long time. And then my book publisher persuaded me to use it in the book. And the reason is because of the timing. My book was not scheduled. I'm sorry, you didn't ask about my book, but I'm talking about it.
Oh, go for it. I don't mind. I'm all good.
My book was not scheduled to be published until December of 2021. And over the course of the summer and fall of last year, things were heating up so quickly. And you guys were running around London wearing dinosaur outfits, and the labor leaders were saying crazy things about cervixes. And I kept pushing my publisher to move the publication date up because I felt there was so much momentum, and he wouldn't do it. And then in October, when Dave Chappelle went on Netflix and called himself Team TERF and labeled himself as aligned with J.K. Rowling, I wrote to the publisher and I was like, we have just got to go with this. And he agreed to do it. So we pushed the publication date back a bit, and it came out in November of 2021. And he insisted, he was like, you need to claim this for yourself. If Dave Chappelle is saying he's Team TERF, then you need to as well. And he persuaded me to add a sentence that says, look, if being on the side of material reality and being on the side of the sex-based rights of women and girls makes me a TERF, so be it.
It's just a word at the end of the day. Like I avoided using it because of all the things that were going on with my cancellation, and I didn't want it to be a situation where if I end up in court or something like that, I'm having to defend myself on saying that TERF is a slur and then having it on my merchandise and things like that. So I've stayed away from that word. But it has been really, I have had times when I've been tempted to use it because it's been sort of reclaimed a little bit well, I don't know if reclaimed is the word, but it's been sort of turned around in the UK a little bit. Like that word isn't such an insult anymore, if that makes sense. It doesn't really work on people anymore because there's so many women just proud of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's definitely how I feel.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how that happens.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I mean, look, our movement for the sex-based rights of women and girls and for lesbians and gay men is going slower than any of us would like. We'd like to speed this up already and get this done.
Well, that's because it's stupid. We shouldn't have to argue about what a woman is or what a man is. But nobody's arguing what a man is anyway. But we shouldn't have to argue about what a woman is. Or even like the idea that people are opposed to or angry with people that don't want to sterilize children. That's weird.
Yeah. I mean, J.K. Rowling just made the best point on Twitter when she said,
she always does.
She always does. But like, what is self-own? Are you really going to call the safeguarding of children right wing? That is such a self-own for the left. Stop it.
I think the left needs to shut up moaning about the right wing, to be honest. I think they need to stop it. And I know you just said you're left wing and everything. I don't know what I am anymore. I used to be on the left, and now I don't feel like I'm on the right really either. I feel like I'm kind of in the middle. But I feel like it happens here, and I think it happens in America. The demonization of the right is unfair, and it contributes to the demonization of women who care about safeguarding, because instead of calling you TERF, they now call you right wing.
Yeah. And it's a total self-own politically. And the American right doesn't hesitate to use it. The American right is like, okay, if we're the ones in favor of child safeguarding, vote for us. Right?
Yes, I think the American right, I've seen people, I know people don't like him, but people like Matt Walsh would be the first one to laugh at that and take it on. and be like, yep, okay, that's me. Yep. And you guys are the ones that don't care about safeguarding children. Great. We're glad we've established that. So I think it's interesting how that happened. I think in the UK, the right is a little more hesitant about that sort of thing. I think people on the right are a little bit browbeaten because of the narrative around being right wing is so negative.
That very well may be. The same thing plays out here in terms of gay marriage. The right is so, they got beaten so hard for their opposition to gay marriage that they're often very hesitant to speak out. And Matt Walsh is an exception to that. And, I don't like almost anything that he has to say about politics. And I really don't like his demonization of feminists. And I watched his movie and I wrote a statement about it. And, but I think he gets a lot of things right, of course, on the issue of safeguarding children. And I also think that I agree with you that well, you didn't say this, but the American right is much less homophobic than is made out to be. And I have evidence to demonstrate that, so here's just kind of a funny story. I get in lots of trouble for going on Tucker Carlson, right? Fox News.
Oh, yes. Yes,
right?
You go on his show.
Yeah, people yell at me for going on his show. And I get it, right? Like I don't ever watch his show unless I'm on it. But there's a woman, American woman, she's currently living in Germany, named Julia Beck. And Julia is a lesbian radical feminist. And she testified before Congress, and she presented a radical feminist lesbian opposition to gender identity before the United States Congress. And Tucker Carlson's producers reached out to me and said, do you know her? Can you get her on the show? And of course, I do know her. And I was talking on the phone with Tucker Carlson's producers, and I just blurted out, you'd have a lesbian on the show? And this producer was so offended that I was basically calling her a homophobe.
Yep.
And she said, I am shocked that you would even ask that question. And I apologized. I was like, I'm so sorry. And she said, I'm asking you if you can help me get her on the show. And so we did, and we got her on the show. And, they were happy to platform a radical feminist lesbian. I just think that the American right is much less homophobic today than they were a couple decades ago. They definitely were a couple decades ago. No doubt about that. But I think it's just less rampant. And I think, what's going on today with Drag Queen Story Hour and the teaching of gender identity in schools, I think that's going to be a backlash against lesbians and gays. Definitely going to be a backlash.
I think that's why I'm so pleased about Gays Against Groomers, because there needs to be a gay, lesbian and bisexual pushback to those sorts of things to distance themselves from that, because I don't know if it's the same in America, but in the UK we had Pi, and it was like the paedophile information exchange in the 80s. And so it seems to me like these weirdos and perverts and people that want to access children have always tried to latch on to LGB and try to use that as their shield to get in. So it's not a surprise to me that people will have a negative reaction to gays and lesbians if they see things like Drag Queen Story Hour in schools. And I can't say that all of the drag queens are paedophiles, but I can say that some of them will be, and that's going to tar not just the drag queens, but the gays and the lesbians and the bisexuals in with them as well. And it's not a good look.
Yeah, no, it's awful. We have something called the National Association of Man-Boy Love.
Oh, I've heard about that. That sounds gross as well.
It's disgusting. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. The normalization of pedophilia.
That's happening so much at the moment, and people are openly defending it, like on Twitter especially. I mean, I don't know why I'm surprised that people defend it on Twitter. I think I'm just surprised that people are willing to type that. I mean, they're not saying it to my face out loud in real life, are they? But I'm surprised people are willing to type it and put it online. And it's not just anonymous accounts. There was a Liberal Democrat councillor from Wokingham, that's a real thing, in the UK the other week, who berated me on Twitter for not respecting the preferred pronouns of a convicted paedophile. And she was going on and on and on for about 4 days. She wouldn't leave it alone. She was saying it's just a matter of politeness, it's a matter of kindness, it's all about decency, like human decency. And I just thought, but I don't owe that to a convicted paedophile. And so there's a lot of, it's not that I don't think for 1 second that these people don't realise they're defending a paedophile. I think they know they're defending a paedophile. They're just justifying it with the shield of trans.
Yeah. I mean, how can they not know?
Well, I told her it was a convicted paedophile. She knew it was a convicted paedophile. She came to my status about it, my tweet. Yeah, she knew it was but because this person's trans, that trumps whatever crime he's committed. And I had a few people saying that to me. Doesn't matter what the crime is, no matter what the crime is, you owe this person basic decency and basic respect. No, I don't. And I think there's a lot of that going on, a lot of people wanting to be kind and all that shit. So then you've got things like drag queen story hour happening in schools because people think, well, you've got to be kind to these drag queens because they're misunderstood by society. No, the reason that they're not in mainstream society is because it's adult entertainment. Yeah. It's not for children. But there seems to be, a blurring of the lines going on with all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a man who goes by the name of Princess Zoe.
Excellent. Right. Good name choice. I mean, I can't criticize it. I'm the famous artist Birdie Rose. Right. I can't openly criticize people's name choices, but okay, if you want to be a princess.
That's his name, Princess Zoe. And
fucking hell.
I don't even want to say this out loud because it's horrible, but he was convicted of raping a 12-year-old girl.
Brilliant. In a really sarcastic way, by the way. I said brilliant sarcastically, not just came out.
And once he started calling himself Princess Zoe, he got held in a women's prison.
This is fucking disgusting.
Yeah.
Things like that, they make me feel sick. Like, I've been doing my research to make a video about mermaids. I don't know if you know about what's going on with that in the UK. And it's been giving me belly aches.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, like, it's not like, when you're nervous about something, it's a bit like that, but worse. It just feels like I get like a knot in my stomach. It's making me feel sick. And I don't know how people are defending it and they're saying, but these people are trans and, they're marginalized, or they, it's almost like they're saying these people are trans, therefore they should be forgiven no matter what.
Yeah.
Or they don't know what they're doing because they're trans. So it's almost like, they can be a paedophile and they can't help it because they're trans. That's weird.
Yeah. And I'm not aware of any segment of society in human history where anything like this has been allowed to happen. I really am not. Not
in terms of paedophiles, I'm not sure. The paedophile information exchange, as far as I can remember from the small details I read about it, is a lot of people on the left were scared to challenge it because they didn't want to be seen as not very nice, basically.
I don't understand it, and as I said that, I realized, of course, the church got away with a lot of pedophilia for a very long time.
Yes, there's churches that have done all that shit as well, isn't there? The Catholic Church is known for it, but I'm sure, Christian churches have done it as well. But that was all to do with creating like a protected class in society that are untouchable. And it feels like we've done that with trans. We've created a class of people that you're not allowed to even criticize. You can't even breathe on them. Can't even look at them the wrong way. You have to. They're higher than us, aren't they? That's how they're talked about. When people talk about their trans kids, they always talk about their kid as if they have some sort of higher knowledge. like some sort of supernatural a supernatural ability to know things that we don't know. We're just mere mortals and they're these amazing creatures. It's weird, absolutely weird to put that on people.
I've seen the word sacred used. Sacred.
Yeah, I've not seen sacred, but the language around it is religious, isn't it? Like outside Dave Chappelle's thing when the people at Netflix were protesting and they were saying, somebody said, repent, motherfucker. There's that. Somebody told me on Twitter the other day that
not only did she say it, she screamed it.
Yes, over and over again. She was absolutely nuts with it. And people are like that. Somebody on Twitter the other day said to me that I am carrying the stain of the homophobic craze of the 80s, because obviously me not believing that men can be women is homophobic. And also in real life, I went to Kelly J. Keen's event in Brighton a few weeks ago, and the trans rights activists that were there was a young woman. She must have been about 20, I think, and she was all dressed nice, but she looked a little bit like a hippie, and she was just, everybody was chanting trans women are women, and she was doing this in the crowd. She was just like this, like she's at Glastonbury or something. And I just looked at her and I was thinking, well, as if this isn't weird and culty, but you're saying the quiet part out loud. You're doing all this, and you're supposed to be the science believers, to people who are progressing forwards into the future. You know something we don't, but you don't have much to say for yourself.
Yeah, I went to an event in Philadelphia where we were having a Let Women Speak event, and I was talking, and I had a few minutes of prepared remarks, and as soon as I started, a woman literally walked up to me and grabbed the microphone out of my hand and said, "Fuck off."
Excellent.
I know, right? Like that's
great. That's great way to put your argument forward.
Right. I was giving this talk about how, the founding fathers of America thought that, all men are created equal. And I was giving this feminist talk about how women deserve liberty too. I was right outside the Liberty Bell, and her argument was fuck off. And then they all started chanting, "TERFs go home, TERFs go home."
Yeah, they did that to us as well.
It's like, would you like to talk? Would you like to have a conversation? Because I'm happy to do that.
I don't think they do. I don't think they want to have a conversation. But the thing is, the reason they don't want a conversation is because they don't really know what they'll say for themselves. And I felt like Jon Stewart didn't really know what to say.
Yeah.
There was no substance underneath it.
No. And an example of that is I was rewatching it earlier today. He's got this couple of minutes where he strings together all of these conservatives, some Christian evangelicals, some conservative politicians, and he takes minute clips of each of them and strings them all together into a couple of minutes worth of conservatives and Christian evangelicals saying a bunch of things about gender and gender identity, but they're all taken completely out of context. And then when he wants to capture the talks given by women and men who have had hormones and surgeries, they get full airtime, right? They get to say the full extent of what they want to say about how their gender affirming care saved their lives. But again, no even mention of the tens of thousands of Americans who have woken up to what they have done to themselves and come back from it. I want to just speak a little bit to your point about that feeling of having a knot in the pit of your stomach. And you and Dennis talked a little bit about this the other day, which you posted yesterday. And you talked about the impact of all of this on the mental health of the women and men who continue to speak out about it. And I just wanted to mention, I have been physically sick for the past couple of days. On Friday, but I also just want to say, you noted in your conversation with Dennis that we often don't talk about this, and you're right. And I've been thinking there are a couple of reasons why. And one of the reasons why we don't talk about it is that those of us who continue to speak out, it probably doesn't occur to many of us to talk about it because we just keep doing what we're doing. But another reason that we don't talk about it is that we don't want to sound like we're having a self-pity party, right? I don't want to be here on your channel just sort of whining about my mental and physical health. And then the other reason is that, you know, we have political enemies who would use it against us.
Of course, they'd love it.
Yeah, right. So, but I did just want to say, so when we're having this conversation right now, this is Monday, right? So on Friday, I spent almost the entire day reading a piece that was published in Reuters, which is mostly good because it exposes the dangers of what's happening to the kids and young adults who take these horrible hormones and have surgeries to permanently sterilize and mutilate themselves. But it's a very long piece, and I spent a long time reading it, digesting it, and writing about it. And it made me feel physically sick. Like it just, because once you sit with the knowledge of what's happening to these children and young adults, it is sickening.
Yep, I agree.
I felt physically sick on Friday, and then I had to watch the Jon Stewart thing. And then I'm just going to say this. I just spent some time Saturday crying. Like I just did. I had a meltdown and I spent some time crying. And then on Sunday, I woke up and I read a thing about, WPATH, right? World Professional Association for Transgender Health. Its current standards of care, use the word eunuch to describe a gender identity. So these are men and boys who have had their penises and testicles removed. And that is a gender identity, according to
this is to explain detransitioners, isn't it?
It could be. But the thing I was reading talked about how the guy who got WPATH to classify eunuch as a gender identity, in 2014, he was writing an op-ed in the Washington Post encouraging, are you ready?
Yep.
Encouraging ISIS to castrate its prisoners. I know.
What the fuck?
Yeah. So then that made me sick too. You know, it's hard to do this. It's hard to know what is happening in the world of sex and gender. It's hard to know that men who rape 12-year-old girls are being housed in women's prisons. It's hard to know.
Yeah, it is. And it gets overwhelming as well. Like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I have days where it is too much and I just cannot even talk about it. I don't even want to look at it. So I don't. I just, I do things like go to the gym and get on with some art, and I'll do some art that's not related to this, or I'll do something else for the day, cook or clean the flat, because I hardly ever clean when I need to. But I feel like there's other things I need to do to keep myself relatively sane as well. That's why, obviously I had health issues as well, but it has been a bit of a lifesaver for me to go to the gym, because when I go there for that hour, I'm not plugged into the world in any sort of way whatsoever. Got no Wi-Fi, I've got no nothing, just music, and that's it. And whatever I'm doing in the gym. And the people in there are normal people as well, so they're not talking to me about anything like this. So yeah, it seems like it does get a bit much. Like when the mermaid stuff started coming out last week, everybody else was talking about it on Twitter, everybody on my Twitter world, and I felt like I didn't have a lot to say about it because it doesn't feel like a sweet victory win for me. It feels like we're finally starting to unwrap the hell that we're putting kids through, and I don't get any satisfaction in it. I just want it to end, and I want it to end now, but it's ending the slowest way possible. And along the way, a lot more people are going to be hurt. And I feel like that's very hard to process, and it's very hard to take, especially when you get put through a lot as well. I know you've been cancelled, or you've had some sort of cancellation in your life. Me and Du's got cancelled twice, and it had destroyed some parts of our lives and not others. I don't want to say it's ruined my life because it hasn't. And if I did say that, these people get so much joy out of hearing it. So I've made sure that it hasn't ruined my life, but it does affect you because you pay such a heavy price, and you don't see society moving forward to put a stop to this in any sort of way. And then all these little things happen, and you think, this is the thing that's going to break it. This is the thing that's going to break the spell. And it doesn't break the spell. It just breaks the spell maybe one or two people at a time. But we've got like 60 million people to get through in the UK, and you've got 300 million in the US to get through to. So we can't, if you were trying to peak one person a day, 300 million people, that's years and years and years and years and years and years. And by then, all their kids need peaking.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens, of course. People like to talk about needing lawsuits in the US in a similar way that you have had success with lawsuits in the UK.
It's different institutions, though, isn't it? Because, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Here, Kira Bell sued Tavistock. I think she sued Tavistock. But those sort of things, like Tavistock and Mermaids is actually a charity. But I think Tavistock is NHS funded with our universal healthcare. So when you're suing that, you're effectively suing something that is funded by everybody. And in the US, I'm guessing if you were to sue the hospitals, you would have to sue the surgeon, like as an individual.
I don't know the answer to that.
I think that could be a deterrent to sue the actual surgeons that are doing it, because I keep getting recommended these. I'm not trying to go off on another road. I'll come back to what you were about to say, but I keep getting recommended these Instagram profiles of women that go to the gym. They're doing all the same stuff I'm doing, and they bulk up and they have top surgery, and then they say they're not women anymore, and they always praise their surgeon and tag their surgeon in it, like if they're American. And then on the surgeon's page, they're completely glorifying it and advertising it, like aimed at teenage girls and young women. So maybe it's the individuals that need to be gone after in the courts.
Yeah, could be. But I also know that lawsuits take forever in the States.
And they're expensive.
They're so expensive. I was just astonished to see how quickly Kira Bell and Maya's and Allison Bailey's cases all went through your courts. We've had cases that have been languishing for years in the federal courts, and they're just still going. So I'm less optimistic about lawsuits being what's gonna fix this. But I do think we're eventually going to get public opinion, because ordinary individuals, regardless of political orientation,
normal people know what's up.
Yeah.
Normal people. So you tell a normal person, Dave wants to be known as Daisy now. They'll go, all right then. They might go, that's a bit weird, but okay. And then you say to the normal person, well, Dave's not just Daisy, but Dave is actually a real woman now. A normal person would go, that don't sound right. I'm okay with calling Dave Daisy, but I'm not okay with pretending he's a woman. And I think normal people have boundaries that are less easily squashed with, oh, but you need to be kind.
Yeah, I think that's true. So I think ultimately we're going to win in the court of public opinion. It's just a matter of time. And then we over here are going to have to do all the work of getting gender identity out of the law everywhere it appears, which is everywhere.
That's a different thing. I mean, like even over here, there's pushes, people trying to get it in law. That I know that I think it was in Scotland they were trying to talk. They were talking about prison sentences for misgendering, and it's like everything that happens in Scotland eventually comes to England. Like it's like we test the laws out up there first, and then we go, all right, that's a good law, let's bring it down here. I don't know if that's true or not. I made that up, but it just seems like that's what happens. And it does seem weird to me that it's got its roots in everything. Like it seems to have, it's got its fingers dipped in every institution that you can think of. But then I thought a lot, I've been going a little bit down the rabbit hole of thinking about like queer theory and where all of that comes from. I know James Lindsay does a lot on it, but I do listen to his podcast sometimes, but it's very, very heavy going. So I listen to like half an hour and then I need a break for about a week because I just need to take it in, and I need to get the dictionary out as well when I listen to James Lindsay. I need to know what he's talking about. It feels like there's a whole other world that's been going on without me even noticing for years and years and years. Like this stuff goes back from maybe before I was even born.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to the 60s and 70s. And, you know, here's what I really think. I think that the queer theorists who were talking amongst themselves in the ivory towers about how sex isn't real knew that they would lose spectacularly if they tried to convince normal people that sex isn't real. And so they made up words like transgender. All of a sudden, we've got transgender. And transgender means someone is part of a marginalized community for whom sex isn't relevant. It's this other thing. It's trans. But of course, you know, and that was very successful, right? They succeeded in persuading people all over the place, including conservatives, that there's this category called transgender for whom sex is irrelevant. And it's not true, of course, but that was the agenda of the queer theorists. But they knew it was never going to work if they just talked amongst themselves about how sex isn't real.
I feel like the queer theory stuff as well, it totally explains all the sort of like paedophile stuff as well, like the predatory stuff, because I feel like that a lot of that is intertwined, and a lot of the people that I can't say, I mean, who invented queer theory? I know there was Judith Butler was involved in it and a few other people. I can't remember all their names. I hear it so often on podcasts, but
I think it generally gets traced back to Michel Foucault.
Yeah, that's the one. He's the one that definitely was involved in children, or no, allegedly was involved in children. We can't say definitely on him, can we? I think allegedly.
I don't know, but I'm fairly certain he advocated for it.
Yes, because I was in the gym not so long ago and I was listening to Douglas Murray's new book, and I don't know if this has happened to anybody else, but sometimes I put the book on Bluetooth on my phone and it goes through my hearing aid. And every now and again, I get worried that it hasn't gone to my hearing aid. It's gone to the speakers in the gym. And the first thing I heard was Michel Foucault and the kids. And I was like, has this just gone through the speakers? I don't want people to think I'm listening to weird shit, even though I'm definitely listening to some weird shit. But yeah, I find all of that really interesting. I feel like I need to really take some time to process what happened there with queer theory and how that has gained relevance in our society. Like, I think there's so many different variables to it, why people are falling for it and why people are holding on to that as the thing. You know, obviously there's religion not being as popular in the UK anymore. There's poverty, people growing up feeling like they don't have as many prospects as their parents might have had, which I don't think is true. And people obviously being politically brainwashed as well into thinking that you need to be angry at somebody all the time when you don't. There isn't a side necessarily to blame all the time for everything. And yeah, I just think there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. I think that's why people feel a bit, I mean, I don't know, I'm speaking for myself. I get a bit overwhelmed with everything because there's not just these men are pretending to be women and these crazy people are trying to make us go along with it. There's lots and lots and lots of layers to this.
Yeah. And I mean, just getting back to, you know, what we were talking about, this is why it's so dangerous for Jon Stewart to be doing what he's doing.
Yep. He's making it seem like it's as simple as sex is fluid and anybody who says so is just basically a hater.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's giving legitimacy and credence to the idea that there's no such thing as the material reality of sex. And I just think
Yeah,
that's
but he knows when he was marrying his wife, he knew what she was. And when he made kids with her, he knew what she was when they were doing the old.
right.
That was really immature of me, sorry. But when they were getting on and doing their thing, he knew that he was having sex with a woman. There's no way that when they had sex, he was worried at any point that he might get pregnant.
Right. Or that he was gay.
Yeah. There's no way. So it is on so many levels. Again, the levels thing, the layers. On so many layers, that's disingenuous what he's doing. And it did make me feel a bit, it was a little bit gross. And I noticed as well how old he is now. That's not a dig at him. That's like, I was like, oh shit, he's like quite an old man. I looked him up. I looked up his family, not in a creepy way. I just Googled them. And his kids look like they're about the right age now for woke stuff.
Mm.
So maybe his kids are into all of this. His wife's a vegan and he became vegan. So I was like, not that there's anything wrong with being vegan, but all the vegans I've ever known have always been also in the trans camp, like trans rights activists. So there's a lot of crossover in communities there, and there's a lot of crossover ideologically.
I mean, I know plenty of radical feminists, gender critical vegans. I was vegan for a while, but then
that's not to say all vegans are trans activists. It's that a lot of vegans are, and a lot of trans activists are vegan or whatever it is. I was vegan for a little while as well, for about 2 years.
Yeah. I just got lazy and I just started eating cheese again and putting milk in my tea.
For me, it was more sort of, it wasn't, with my PCOS as well, it's not helpful to go vegan. It's helpful to cut out dairy and to cut out processed food, but it's not healthy. It's not healthy for me to cut out everything. So I don't know. Being vegan was pretty good on the road though, because when you're living in a van, I didn't want any meat in the van. I just find that disgusting if you don't have a fridge and you're not keeping everything, looking after everything properly. So no meat in the van. We didn't have any meat for a long time, but it was okay. But I'm like you, I get a bit lazy with things as well. And also for me personally, it doesn't work, but I know plenty of people that swear by it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not like hardcore opinionated on what people should eat. I've only got an opinion on what I should eat.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say, I think that I felt the best physically for a couple of years when I was vegan, but also fish, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
So no meat, no dairy, no eggs, but I did eat fish and otherwise vegan. And that just felt the best. I wasn't opinionated about it. Is that just how it felt?
Yeah,
good?
I wasn't opinionated either. Like a lot of people didn't even know I was vegan. So,
Yeah.
And I was vegetarian for longer than I was vegan. But I just, the fish thing, that's interesting because I didn't eat fish either, obviously, because we lived in a van. I'm not going to keep fish in the van. But I feel like this has gone off a little bit off topic, but when I started the gym, I started a new meal program. And basically it was no dairy, no gluten, no sugar, no caffeine, no alcohol. And that, I felt the best I've ever felt on that. And it was no processed food as well. So there was like, I could have some meat, but it was mainly chicken and fish were pretty much the only meats I ate. And most of what I ate was vegetables and some carbs. I did have carbs. We didn't cut that out, but I really ate the carbs on the days that I lifted weights. That was the best I felt. But as soon as summer hit, I just ate chips and beer. That's all I've had all summer, chips and beer. And then I lost it. I lost the momentum with eating right.
Well, cheers to that.
Yeah. And I've got tea as well. So I was going to say about we were talking a little bit about the mental health aspect of this. Do you think that this does affect a lot of people, or do you think people are just so focused on making sure that we overcome this that they're leaving themselves behind a little bit?
Yeah, it's hard to know, because as you said in your conversation,
we don't talk about it.
But I do think it takes a toll. I mean, how can it not? And one of the things that I think takes a toll, even more than the cancellation and the TRAs, is the women who are on our side, who try to tear down other women.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. I mean, I don't know if you saw after the Brighton event, there was this whole thing about how there was somebody, apparently there was 2 people there that have been labelled far right. I don't think they are, but they were labelled far right, and we've got to denounce them, or people that were there have got to denounce them. I'm not going to play that game. You can't make me. I'm not going to play it. You can't make me. I'm not going to go around my whole life announcing to people, like, I'm definitely against murder, everyone, just so that you know, I'm denouncing Charles Manson. And just so that you know, I'm denouncing Ted Bundy. And just so that you know, I'm denouncing Myra Hindley. I don't think that's necessary. Especially when it comes to things like a public event where anybody can turn up, then you don't know who's going to be there. Because if you go out in the street, you go out for a coffee, or you go out for a beer, or you go out for a meal, you could be in a restaurant with somebody who is on the right, or maybe even on the far right, and you don't know. Are you supposed to find out who that person, who everybody in that restaurant is, and make sure you denounce them? No, it's a bit of a stretch to ask that of people. And I think this infighting that you get with different factions of feminists and gender criticals and women in general, I think the infighting is really unhelpful, and it's a massive distraction, and it adds to the stress amongst people. Because what happens when you get cancelled, or not even if you don't get cancelled, you just peak and you realise this thing's going on and it's terrible, and everybody, the whole world is under a spell, and they've all fallen for it, and you're trying to wake them all up. You find your tribe, you find your people, and you're like, these are the women that understand me. They get it. This is brilliant. I've got a Team Turf. And then you have these fallouts over things like somebody was at a public event in a public area, and you're supposed to have known who they were, and you now need to denounce them. Right. It just doesn't sit right with me, because we're in a very unique position at the moment of fighting this gender identity ideology thing. I say fighting, I don't like using language like that, because it's like war language, but at the same time, sometimes it does feel like a war. And we're not having like a war with bombs, we're having a war with language. Does that make sense? And it feels like it's such a letdown. It's such a waste of our time to be fighting each other on this shit. We can fight each other on this shit when there's nothing else to fight.
Yep. I agree. But that is part of what takes such a toll.
Yeah, I think so, because I think people get stressed out about, do you know what it is? When I got cancelled, one of the most stressful things was obviously being exiled from the group, being kicked out of the music scene and the art scene. Being exiled is really painful. And then it's the guilt by association that happens to everybody around you, and then people making public denunciations of you. So I now associate that behaviour when I see people demanding a public denunciation of somebody. I associate that behaviour with what happened to me. And I just get a bit, I don't want to say the word triggered, but I get a bit, it does trigger some emotions for me. And I take it a certain way when I see people behaving like that. In my mind, you're now categorised as one of those people that would do that to me.
Right.
And I'm not going to play that game. I'm not going to take part in that. I've said a few things on Twitter about it, just along the lines of, I don't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
I want to think for myself. And actually, the irony is a lot of us are in this because we don't like being told what to do. So
Yep.
You know, we're not just going to go along with being told that you have to do this or you have to do that. So we're going to have to find a way to navigate it. And the other problem with things like that is that this movement, if you want to call it a movement, it is mostly about women, even though there's child safeguarding issues, and it affects men, it affects everybody. But on the front lines of this are women, and women are half the planet, and we're not going to exactly march in lockstep ideologically with our thoughts. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of things that I disagree with you and a lot of people, but I am really glad to know you and a lot of other people in this. Does that make sense? Because I can see your strengths and we need it.
Totally. Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah.
So should we go then?
Yeah, how long have we been? Hang on, I'm so unprofessional. So we've been for about an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been lovely to chat to you. And yeah, I've had tea this time, so I'm not as chipper as I was with Dennis. It's a Monday as well. I'm usually a bit tired on a Monday. I'm a bit of a slug.
Thanks so much for talking.
It's been lovely chatting to you. And actually, I would like maybe in a few months' time to catch up with you again, because I'm really interested in how it's going in America. And I want to, I mean, you've got a lot of shit coming up, haven't you? You've got, oh no, you haven't. You've done elections. You did it last year. Biden got in. Oh, well, you ain't got that coming up.
We've got congressional elections in November, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah. And what does that mean? Is that like more state to state stuff, or is it overall?
It's all of Congress, basically. Not all of Congress, but like some large percentage of members of Congress are up for re-election in November.
Oh shit. Okay, that's quite big.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'll keep an eye on that, and I'll talk to you maybe in a few months' time. I'll get you scheduled in and we'll have another chat.
That sounds great, Bertie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Early in the morning, as the sun comes up, I just wanna have a cup. There's one drink, that's the one for me. Won't you